Don't move. Keep it locked.
You already know.
You're listening to the Forfeit Fatherhood podcast. And we're having conversations with dope dads covering the 4 pillars of fatherhood. We call it the Fit Fatherhood Formula. Faith, family, finance, and fitness. That's right. These dads are setting the pace in business and fatherhood. This show isn't only about the outside success. We're getting down to who you are. Gentlemen, it's time to get fit. And now, let's get into the show.
All right. Welcome back to the Forfeit Fatherhood podcast, a podcast for fathers, by fathers, where we talk about the 4 pillars of fatherhood, which are faith, family, finance, and fitness. And I'm excited for this particular episode. Not that I'm biased, and I'm excited for all the episodes, but this one kind of touches me a little differently because I was influenced or inspired by this man to have a conversation with my father that I hadn't had. And it opened up our relationship in a new way. So I'm extremely grateful for our guest today. But then also we kind of started around the same time with this fatherhood idea and podcasting and kind of getting into this. So we kind of cut our teeth together. And now that we're a few years in, we kind of come back together and get a chance to talk. So my guest today is the host of the Dear Son podcast, D. Johns. My man, what's going on, brother?
Everything is lovely, man. Glad to be here. I appreciate the invite back.
Yeah. You know what? It's a long time coming too, because I've been thinking about it. Like, man, I should reach back out and see if we can get back together and just talk about what's changed. You've had some stuff going on in life, and you've elevated to another level of fatherhood, which we definitely got to talk about. But you know, I see you working, you grinding. I'm trying to do things on my end, and I knew it would happen eventually. So I didn't press it, but I probably should have got on you a little sooner and made something happen.
It's all good, man. Timing is everything. And I think today is perfect.
Yeah. All right. Well, if the guys weren't listening back at the beginning and they don't know, or they haven't caught the Dear Son podcast, or you got a couple of different things you're doing now. But if they haven't yet experienced you in all your glory, would you tell the brothers a little bit about yourself?
So D. Johns, I'm a father of 5, 3 girls, 2 boys, girl, boy, boy. And the latest addition is a granddaughter. She is should be 8 months in a couple of days as of the time of this recording. So life has definitely changed since then. 1 wife, same mother of all my children. I don't say that as a flex, but flex a little bit, you know. I appreciate that. Less headache for me. But just the dad trying to figure it out, man. I did have my dad in my house, very present father. He was dealing with some things that he's, since worked through since I was a child. So there's an opportunity for both of us to grow and understand each other as men now, which I appreciate. And also grant him some grace for the time that he was growing up as I was growing up. And I didn't realize he was growing up too. So, we have a perspective as children of our parents, not realizing that they're basically just older children trying to figure it out. And my dad didn't have his dad once he became a man, so he was winging it. So this podcast was started basically to keep me accountable to my son. My son was coming into his early teenage years, and that's when I started rejecting information from my dad. Not that it was anything very visible to him, because my dad, he ruled the house, so it was a very quiet disdain for him, and I just didn't like the rules of the house. As some teenagers go through. I went a little bit to the extreme in terms of creating distance between me and my dad. So that led into my adult years, and I learned some lessons that I didn't have to learn if I'd have just talked to him. So as my son was approaching that age, it freaked me out because I was kind of managing like hands off, and that's not the kind of son that I had at that time, nor is he that today. He wants to be involved and engaged. So it's basically to keep myself accountable, to have some conversations that me and my father are having now, but would have been better served when I was 13, 14, 18, 20, 22. So that's the whole premise of the main show. As you said, I have a few things going on, but the main show is essentially staging conversations that should happen between a biological father and son, but often don't for a number of reasons. So we have them on camera and try to get some revelations to help some folks.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think something you pointed out there that you brought up is extremely important for all of us to remember, is that for a lot of us, unless you're the I mean, if you're the firstborn or you're the only child, you are your parents' first experience of parenting. Like they didn't have parenting, just like you don't, right? They didn't have parenting school. They come from a generation where it was even harder to get parenting information from a parent. And they are learning for the first time, right? Like this is their first experience as a parent, just as your first experience as a person. And they are growing up with you, right? And sometimes I see it around where like people are apologize to their firstborn for all their mistakes, and like the secondborn or thirdborn, or like in your case, number five has a much different parent because they've had so many different experiences along the way that by the time they get to that next child or that last child, they're a completely different person. And I've heard it said, and I know it to be true because my sisters and we have the same parents but different parents, right? Like even to this day, the way that my parents are with me versus the way they're with her, they're lenient with her in some ways they aren't with me. They're they're maybe lenient with me. I don't know if they are, maybe they are, but in her eyes they might be. But they just parent us differently because we're different people, but then also she's older than me. And all my sisters are, I'm the baby. All my sisters are older than me. So they'll all say that they're like, oh, they're so nice to you, or whatever. But not really. Nah, they be on me. But different parents, same household, technically same parents. I think that's something we all have to kind of realize as we're growing up. That, I mean, we won't realize as we're growing up, but as adults, as we're growing up, our parents are growing up with us, and we have to give them some grace in how they handle things, especially because it was a different time. Information wasn't as readily available. There wasn't a bunch of people like us that have podcasts that were talking about parenting or fatherhood or experiences. So they really didn't have much to lean on other than their own understanding. And we know leaning on your own understanding isn't always advisable from the very start, right? The good book could tell you not to lean onto your own understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So listen, man, I'm far away from it, God willing, from being a grandfather, but you have elevated to the upper echelon of fatherhood, like the next level of fatherhood. What has the last 8 months been like as I think you said grandpop, right? Was that what you call yourself now?
Pop pop. Pop pop
Pop.
officially.
Yeah.
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 Pop officially. So that's been my new title, man. And that's what I'll answer to first. Not that she can say it, but anytime there's a reference to pop pop, you'll get my attention before anything else. But it's been a whole lot of I get it now, especially talking to my dad, because we talk about who they were when we were children, who they are as adults, and if you're lucky to have your parents alive, which I realize I am, who they are later in life. When my parents became grandparents, I used to, read my dad specifically, but both of them, like, who are you? Because I don't know. This grandparent is not my parent. I don't know who you are. And he, we finally had a conversation about like of a serious tone. He said, son, sometimes, he said, a lot of times I got it wrong as a parent. And as a grandparent, it's an opportunity to correct some things in real time. And I accepted the answer at that time because I wasn't a grandparent. But now that I'm a grandparent, I'm like, oh, you start to see things in your child, especially the child that gave you the grandchild. You start to see more things that maybe you caught or didn't catch that you can kind of see an opportunity to transfer to that grandchild. So just like mannerisms, responsibility, because all three generations are in my house. And that's another thing that I never experienced until now. Like my granddaughter is here. She might make an appearance during this conversation, depending on how long we go and when she gets up from her nap. But it's been humbling, man. It's been very humbling. I've been very grateful to realize that, man, we get another go round at this, and I can make good on some things that I wasn't necessarily tracking first time around. Because it was my oldest, like you said, the first out the gate, we were winging it.
Yeah.
By the time we got to child number 4, funny thing is, by the time we got to child number 4, we had to relearn because there's a 6-year gap between 3 and 4. So after 3, we really thought we were finished, and then my wife got pregnant. She got pregnant again, and I was like, wow. So
Yeah. You know what too is usually with the first one, you're based on age in the midst of your striving, right? And like you're doing all the things to prepare yourself to have a life, right? And you're probably working as hard as you've ever worked, or you and your wife are still young and still doing all the stuff that you would do as a young person. You're going happy hours, you're spending time doing that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden the kid comes and you accept the responsibility and you know that there's going to be change, but it's hard to disconnect from the identity that you just started building as your own man, right? And then you become father, and like it's like, okay, I'm trying to figure this out and I'm trying to lean into this role as much as I can because I care about it, but I really don't have the experience for it. And I think now you've got a wealth of experience that you can lend to a baby, you know what I mean? Not only just through your own parenting, but because of what you do and who you are, you not only have your own experiences, but you have the experiences of others that you've come in contact with, conversations that you had. And so, now at this point, your granddaughter is going to get like super grandpa. I mean, Pop is super Pop, but still a man, right? Still, still going to fall short in some spaces, but with the ability to show up in a better way, the understanding to show up in a better way, to, like you said, maybe right some past transgressions that you may have had with, and it's cool too because it's a granddaughter and it's your daughter's daughter, right? And so
Right.
she's gonna
Yep.
grow up and be very similar in some regards to your daughter, and you're gonna see like this is your second chance to parent your daughter, as you said, right? And so that's really really cool, and having them in the house with you, I think adds another layer to it. Um, and she may be young for this question, but I'm wondering, will this come up? Is how involved in the day to day of parenting or grandparenting are you with your granddaughter?
I see her daily. I mean, that may be a rare occasion where we go a day without seeing them because another life event is my in-laws live here now. So we all are from Virginia. My in-laws relocated, and my father-in-law, his health is declining. So my oldest
Okay,
daughter, who gave the grandchild, goes over there and sits and helps with him. So there are
okay,
some days where we might cross paths or we might not, but for the most part, I'm seeing her, I'm holding her every day. I get to see the progression. Um, the other challenge is the dual challenge is having an adult child in your house. I was
mm-hmm.
never an adult child in my parents' house beyond, I think I moved out at 19. Too soon, but I was out of that house. So a lot of the things, a lot of the habits that I developed, or a lot of the habits that I allowed to flow freely because I was out of that house, they didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to constantly remind myself of, you were once 19, you were once 20. Now my daughter is 21. She'll be 22 this summer. And there's life that she wants to experience. And we're trying to negotiate that with the house rules. So
Yeah.
it's the parenting the child is one thing. Then parenting a child that has a child where you see life different from your child and how she's guiding her child is another like complexity. So it's helped me I've learned to be a little bit more diplomatic and try to lead to answers and not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily give a lot of answers. If something's going off the rail, we got to stop it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's trying to get the more of a reasoning and a rationale approach. Like I'm more of an advisor now, and I've had trouble accepting that. Not so much trouble accepting the advisor role, but turning off the authoritative, the
Mm.
disciplinarian role, because
Okay.
you couldn't discipline me at 21, and I shouldn't. There's an expectation that I need to have of a 21-year-old in my house that some parts of life you're gonna bump your head because you want to. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to, but I also learned that way. So it's those are the pain points now. It's like I see this coming,
Yeah.
and you have a little one. Like so,
Yeah.
it's helped me. It's grown me up quite a bit.
Yeah. Do you think that has any, I mean, obviously it probably does, right? But do you see the effect that may have on the way you're parenting your other children as they're kind of coming towards that age now? Now that you have the experience with parenting an adult in your household, you got, four more kind of approaching that every day. Do you kind of see yourself retooling how you maybe prepare them for that point?
Yeah. So another layer of complexity is, so today my children are 21, 19, 17, 11, and 10. So this summer, my 17-year-old, he's graduating from high school in a few weeks, actually, 6 weeks. And
Yeah.
then he'll be an adult. So I'll essentially have 3 adult children in my house. The challenge has always been with the oldest is you kind of set the precedent. So my youngest, my 10-year-old, he's no slouch. Like he's
Uh-huh.
not, and I know all parents, he's not your average 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm,
But when you have older siblings, like he kind of grows you up faster, I
right.
believe. At least it's been my experience. So it's things that he sees that she does that I got to nip in the bud because that sets an expectation for him, even at 10. That,
Mm-hmm.
when I get 18, and same thing with the 19-year-old and the 17-year-old, got to be mindful of, I know you think we're cool and I'm cool dad now because you're technically an adult, but still, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Very much, yes, sir. You know what I mean? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. And responses that may be age appropriate to another adult. You got to set those tones and those boundaries in the house because I can't have the 11 and the 10-year-old picking it up. And then they're starting to rationalize, well, I saw that with my older siblings, why? Especially if it's something that's a habit that I no longer participate in. Because again, I try to be mindful of the phases that I went through. So
Mm-hmm.
there are things that I did that I don't do now because they're not appropriate at this stage of life. And then I'm watching my adult children into those phases of life. And it's like, ugh, remember, you still got young ones watching. And I try to be fair to them because I was also the youngest. And my
Mm-hmm.
sister didn't set a tone of anything rebellious. Like she was the angel. So when it got to me, it was like, ooh, like this boy kind of wilding compared to my sister. And we're 5 years apart. So that
Mm-hmm.
my parents didn't really have a warning child other than me. And I was number 2 of 2. So
Yeah.
it definitely impacts. I can see the results of some of the conversations that I miss with the older ones because I have 2 older girls and an older son. And then my 2 youngest is a girl and a boy as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I see where, man, I wish I had that conversation with them at a much younger age. We may be having it now, but it gives me more courage, honestly, to have the conversations with the younger children.
Yeah. I think that works. I mean, I think that's good for them though, right? Because they're getting a more seasoned version of you. Obviously, it's more demanding on you, right? Because there's more for you now to be aware of. Like you got to be at another level of kind of heightened self awareness because you've got to be aware of how you parent the now adult children. And even within that, there's like layers to it, right? Because your 21-year-old is very different from your 17 or your 19-year-old. Just her situation alone sets her apart from them. And maybe you can kind of treat them similarly because they're not that far apart and they don't have kids and they aren't at maybe that level. But even those two are very different in how you approach them. And then all of that is framing how you parent these next two as they come along. That's a lot, man. Like you are parenting the whole spectrum of because I got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I know how I have to be with them, and even with them I have to be very different. There's a lot of like obvious crossovers because I am who I am and I'm dad to both of you, but their personalities are different in all the ways. They are the same, they are different, and so how I have to show up for each one is different. And I can imagine showing up for 5, especially at different stages of their life and different stages of your parenting journey, right? If you talk about like the C's of parenting. All right, before we jump back into the conversation, I want to share something special with you from our brother, Pastor Aaron of the Daily Drip podcast. Every week, he'll be sharing a short message to help us strengthen our faith, challenge our perspective, and walk this fatherhood journey with more purpose and spiritual awareness. So take a minute, lean in, and let this one sit in your spirit. Here's Pastor Aaron.
What do you need that only Jesus can provide? And then once Jesus provides that, do you keep going to him? Or do you just want to flex to people, look how blessed I am? We're blessed to be a blessing. And as part of being a blessing, we have to endure the criticism of people that don't understand Jesus. That is the faith journey. And if we want to live a life of faith, it is walking out healed and walking past people that doesn't understand the journey that you're on, but inviting them to follow Jesus, not necessarily follow you. Because here's the thing about the faith journey. The faith journey, we all are broke. We all are either lame, blind, or paralyzed. And we need Jesus, not a promotion, not a spouse, not pregnancy. There's nothing wrong with those things. But if those things are more important than Jesus, even when Jesus gets in our face and heals us, it won't be enough. We need healing, and we need people to make us feel better.
Man, that was good. I appreciate you, Pastor Aaron. All right, let's get back into the conversation. We're just getting started. You're in both the coach and the consultant phase at the same time, right? And so I imagine that takes a lot of mental power, right, to kind of make sure that you're showing up the way you want to show up. Do you think though, when because there's a decent sized gap, as you mentioned, between the other two, are the adult children, do you think they're going to stay all the way through, or is there some kind of plan or design for them to move on?
I want them to be prepared. I give them all of the information that I had when I moved out early, all of the mistakes that I've made. As much as I say it on here, I try to say it to them that there's no rush. Now, if your lifestyle is going to be a 180 from what you know is acceptable in the house, I'm not going to sacrifice the house because you're in a phase.
Yeah.
Like we have those discussions. Like some things are just not going to be acceptable in this house. If it's a lifestyle you want to live or something you want to do, you can't bring it to this house because of the makeup of the house, right? There's just certain things that just not going to fly. So aside from that, there's no plan to get them out of the house. I think we do a disservice as a community. Well, let me not speak in general terms. In my family, I've seen, and in my associates and their families, I've seen where the goal was to get out by a certain time, not by a certain level of preparation. So you get out and you flounder and you struggle and you survive, but thriving comes 30 years later. And then we celebrate that. I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah. You know what is funny is we kind of talk when we're talking to our oldest daughter, especially, but even our youngest daughter, we're like, I find that we say, you got 6 more years and you're going to be an adult. And I think about that all the time because we're not going to push her out, right? Like we're not trying to get her out of the house or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I would love for her to stay as long as she needs to stay. If she goes to school and she comes back and she's not ready, then, we've got this place for you. But I do find, and I'll say community, I'll take the bullets for it, and you can stay clean. I find in our community, and a lot of times in society in general, it's like, I only have to parent this kid to 18 and then you're on your own, right? We're not gonna have no adults living up in my house up under my, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff, right? Like we've heard that. I've heard that. Like I left when I was 17. But that was because I was, I went to school to play sports, but I had heard up to that point, like at 18, you get a job or you get out of my house. And it wasn't like because I was doing anything wrong. That was just a conversation. Like at 18, that was what was expected. And I don't, and in no means, even when I was in school, I was on my own technically, right? But not really, because stuff is provided for you through scholarship, and you got housing and food and all the like the comforts that you need. But I was on my own. I don't think I was prepared to be on my own had I not had school, right? Like had I not had these things kind of set up for me. If I just had to get out the house at 17 or 18, you're right. It would have been a lot of struggle that would have happened. And it's just, I don't think it's necessary. I do think there is something to say about struggling, overcoming, and kind of having those experiences, right? But I don't think that if we aren't in a situation where my kids have to get it out the mud, that they probably don't need to, right? There are some lessons that can only be learned a certain way, but I don't think that having to struggle in order to figure out how to live on your own as an adult is necessary. Right. And I don't want my children to have to go through that if they don't have to. Right. So I'm preparing a place for them to learn and grow in a healthy way. I think that's probably maybe a better way to say it, is like there's a healthy way and an unhealthy way to learn and grow. And I'm trying to provide a healthy way for my children to make sure that they are ready to embrace the world once that time comes. But I'm not kicking them out the door. It's like
Yeah.
it's almost like skydiving, right? Like we take we get them up to a certain point and then we open the door and just kick them out. Like, you figure it
Figure it
out.
out. Yeah.
Pull a tab before you hit the ground.
Yeah. Life is going to give them enough of that, just the way that life works. So to put your children through what you went through for the sake of y'all having that in common, I don't consider that successful parenting. Y'all just have
Yeah.
something in common. You did it and they did it too. But how does the family, what moves the lineage and the legacy forward is kind of what I'm looking at. So I'm not giving them a pain-free life. Some may argue. Like there's going to be a very different summer for my sons. And I probably said that 2 summers in a row, but I grew up very disciplined in terms of doing work.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge was I hated the work so much that I swore off that I would never do it as an adult. But when I became an adult, I couldn't pay somebody to cut my grass. I mean, I've done it a couple times, but it's like, you know how to do this. Where I
Right.
fall short is when I'm outside working, I'm not making sure that they're outside with me every time. Like my pops was if he outside, you be outside.
Mm-hmm.
Not after you finish a game or after you get off your
Yeah.
phone. Like, of course we didn't have that, but if he
Right.
was changing the oil in the car, you be up under there pulling the plug too, and
Yeah.
seeing what's going on. And I provided them comfort in that regard. But in terms of, we're gonna set up life for them so they have no learning, no pain points. I'm not talking about that at all. But am I gonna put you all the steps back that I made it forward? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think the whole idea, and my dad was the same way. Like, I remember going and being with him in the summer, man. We was like, I felt like I was a handyman. Like, everything he did, I had to do. We built a fence, we painted the fence, we stained the deck. I remember one summer, man, we worked the entire summer. I felt like every day we had some task that we had to do. I'm like, damn, man, I'm building your house for you. Like, what is happening, man? But what it did do though is it as much as I hated it in the moment, I look back on it and just like now, like it was a fond memory. Like, I smile talking about it now. We had so many conversations that we wouldn't have had if I was inside watching TV while he was outside working. I learned how to do things that, I now have the option to do them or outsource them. Right.
Right.
Like, it's stuff that I learned from him that I wouldn't have, and experiences and a relationship that we have that we wouldn't have. And I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? As much as I hated it then, and I would have rather slept in that morning or watched WWF wrestling that Saturday morning, I had to be outside cutting the grass and trimming the trees, and now I know how to do that stuff. And to your point, I do the same thing with my daughters. Is like, I haven't made them come outside with me. I have from time to time, but not on a consistent basis. Whereas, like, yo, I'm outside doing some yard work. Y'all come out here with me. And if nothing else, we just talk, or, we play music and you get to hear the music I listen to and whatever. But we get to spend that time together, and I've given them the comfort of not having to do that. And that may be something I need to look at, right? Maybe somewhere where I need to maybe change, and maybe not do it to the extent that my dad did it, because there was a lot of, like, when I didn't do it right, he'd be cussing me out. But so maybe that's not how we do it. But the opportunity to be together and have that experience, I think, is important. And I hadn't really thought about it till just now.
Because
So
it's
thank
easy. Yeah, it's just the ease of life, man. And the thing about your daughters is, and I got to do better at that too, is like you're training them what to look for in their mate. So do
you.
you
Mm-hmm.
want them to attract or be attracted to somebody that will work is not important to them?
Yeah.
So even if you and I don't actually do the tasks that we did as children, there's another benefit that when somebody comes to do it, at least you know what you're looking for. Like, now
Yeah.
that's not how you, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you don't have to
Right.
rotate my tires to change the oil. Like, you don't have to do that kind of thing.
Right.
So there's some value.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think that's something, like I said, it's something that I have to look at, but it's also one of those things where and we were just talking to me and my wife were just talking about this because my daughter plays softball. My boy, they both do, but my oldest daughter plays softball, and she's playing travel ball, and so life is a lot more serious with softball, and so she's like on the cusp of like, so she was doing really, really well. She broke her hand. She had to take 10 weeks off. And so now coming back, she's not at the same level she was, right? She's struggling a little bit more than she was before. And so the frustrations of the game are now catching up to her. And, we're kind of talking like, what if she starts to feel like she's burned out or she can't do it? Because it's probably more failures than it is successes at this point. Because it's been maybe 2 weeks. It's only been 2 weeks though, right? So you got to look at it in the grand scheme of things. But she's dealing with it mentally. It's kind of weighing on her. And we were having a conversation like, what if she decides she doesn't want to play anymore? And I looked at it and I'm like, I obviously an athlete and a coach athletes, but I feel like I can teach the lessons that sports teaches on my own. You know what I mean? Like I don't need sports to teach those lessons. There's a lot of really, really good lessons that you get from sports. That's why I think every kid should play some kind of team sport at some point. Not like you should take it as a career and you're going to be in the NBA when you grow up, but you should get some of those lessons. And I'm like, I was talking to my wife. And it's like, I don't know. We don't need softball, right? Like if she decides she doesn't want to play softball, I can still teach those lessons. It'll be a little bit of a different way, but I'll have to actively be doing it. And so just hearing what you were talking about and kind of talking about having them come outside and do work with me, those are some of those times where those lessons can be taught. Whereas if I just allow them to stay in while I go do work, then where am I going to find the time to teach that lesson? Right. Well, if I don't bust my knuckle trying to loosen up a lug nut or something, they don't know about that. Right. They don't get to have that conversation. There's no way for me to kind of bring that up. Right. There's no way for me to show them that hard work. And at the end of it, we sit down together with a glass of lemonade and look at the fence like my dad and I did and talk about like all the hard work and how good it looks. And to this day, it's still stained. Like I went to his house. This was it might have been last summer when we were sitting out back, and he was like, "Look at that fence, man. It still look good." I was like,
Look,
and it's one of those things where it's like we connected back in that moment to that instance, and it's like we won't have that if I don't create or cultivate that. So yeah, I think that's something that we all should do in some way. We got to find a way to do it, whether it be having them do some yard work with us or something. If you have a business, maybe they come in and work in a business with you, but they get to see how you provide and then also how you move in the world outside of the household.
yeah, yeah. We go ahead.
No, please.
I was gonna say when you said work in the business, that's something that I was a little bit hesitant. No, I was scared. I was scared to show my children or introduce them to stuff because now our lives actually depend on it. Like it was cool to say I have a side business when I was in corporate, and corporate was the mainstay. But that hasn't been the mainstay for 2.5 years at this point. So life has looked different, and I've had to have some conversations with them. And I'm thankful for the family that I have because they don't care about stuff. I got caught up in giving them stuff because I wasn't giving them like quality time when I was working because that's how I justified it. And I know it's an age-old story for a lot of men, but it's a real thing. So when the finances had to be adjusted and life had to be adjusted, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. And it was like my kids are content going to a park for their birthday. And I'm thinking, man, I can't do the skate party with the cake and, I can't have it catered and have 30 kids at the house. But they don't care nothing about that. So what I'm learning at this stage was forcing how life is forcing my hand at this stage is being more open and honest with them about this is what's really happening. And this is how life gets sometimes. But, they'll also be able to see me fight through it and build it, and bounce back. So, it's the more open that I've been with my children and my family, life has gotten more manageable for me. Not easier, but a lot more manageable.
Yeah. I think a lot of guys feel what you're talking about, right? Like one, the giving them stuff as opposed to, the time or attention or energy, because that seems like, outside looking in, society's kind of view of like how we're supposed to father. Or if we're going to compare ourselves to other fathers, like, oh man, I like you said, I booked a skate party, and we, that's cool to post on Instagram. Everybody's having fun, and we at the park, we got a sheet cake. But in reality, and to be completely honest, I remember my 10th birthday. We were at Nichols Park in Richmond, and it was the best party I've ever had. I've had some other parties, but like everybody was at the park. We played baseball. We went to the slides. We did all this stuff that we wouldn't have been able to do. Like, sure, we could have skated and had fun there, and that would have been cool. But this, that park party was the one. You know what I mean? Like, I know I had some other parties in my life, but that is the one that I remember the most. And it's important for us to remember as fathers is like, it's not the stuff, right? Our presence is the present. And at a park party, you have to be more present, right? Like, you got to be fully involved. Like, at a skate party, they go skate around for like 2 hours. You barely even see them. They come back and get some water. They hit the floor again. Like, you don't really get to see them. But at the park party, like, you're a main attraction, Dad. Like, you get to climb up in the tree and hang the piñata. Like, you know what I mean? You playing the music. You start the Soul Train. Like, you get to do all of it. And I think most families are that way, and we don't realize it. Like, most kids are, and like they say, kids spell love Time. I think that's true, and we don't realize it because we are trying to parent from our past and provide the things that we didn't have, or trying to set them up like, okay, this is where we are right now, and so this is where we have to build from. And that's partially true, but the reality is we still got to get to the core first. We got to fill the core first before we can start, having them build on where we're at in terms of legacy. I think that gets confused sometimes too, is like legacy is building off of where we are right now, but without a solid foundation, no matter how you add to it, it's still going to crumble. Right. And so I think it's important to have those times or those periods in your life where let's just connect back to the basics, right? Whether it be kind of a transition in career that kind of allows you to do it or forces you to do it, or something you actively step into and realize like, hey, let's get some time where we just do some things together, and let's try life a little differently and see what happens. If we don't like it, we'll make an adjustment, but let's see how that goes for us and really get back to the core of who we are, and that's a family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every day of my life right now.
So let's kind of stay on career. Like, I know you stepped away from corporate, and you mentioned a couple years ago, and you kind of have leaned into your own media empire, as I would call it, because I think you got a ton of things going on. But would you care to share what all you have going on? Obviously, the Dear Son podcast, but what else you got going on?
Yes, under Dear Son, the Dear Son Network, registered trademark. I'm proud of that. The intent is to provide content that helps men see themselves and their brother in a different light. So my grandiose theory, or not even theory, goal is to create like a own for men, like Oprah Winfrey Network, where the content is of a certain type and it's aimed at a certain audience. So that's where I wanted to go. Right now, there are 3 shows that come out every week. So there's one that I have a co-host. There's one that I have a guest, like it was when I first started and you came on, and, we exchanged guest spots on podcasts. And then there's another one that I started with a Dallas influencer who has a crazy story, and he's been successful online, and he's kind of transitioning in his growth to being more responsible with his content and telling his story about what God has done for him. So he's had a story pass. His name is Joe T. Baker III. You might have seen him online. Okay, so boom, he's doing prison stories about his time in prison and how he had a whole lot of things going on. Very, very checkered past, and he lived a certain life, but he's reformed and transformed now. So we have that. So there's 3 shows going out a week on that. There's some documentaries that I'm working on. One, I'm just going to finish. My problem is I always think something can be better. So I keep trying to make things better and they never get done. But I got a couple documentaries. One with Philip Washington. I think you met him when you came out here to the identity conference event that we had, and another one about health. It's called Health Me I Almost Died, and it's looking at stories of people that look like us that have near-death experiences through health challenges that are avoidable and some unavoidable. So that's what's going on in the media space. I also shoot content for other people. I shoot conferences. I shoot other people's podcasts. I do a number of things, but the big bet is on the content that I own the IP on, and we're gonna stay faithful to that end until it pops. So it's bubbling, light summer on the stove right now. We're not gonna watch the pop. We're just gonna maintain and manage it, so that when the time comes, that's the thing that I'm grateful for, is that whenever it happens, the catalog is there and the hours are in. So I'm excited about life. I wish there are days where I wish I had way more control over the outcomes and the incomes for that matter. But I know I am where I'm supposed to be, and those confirmations are daily.
Yeah, I think watching the growth of DSN, the Dear Son Network, and even when you started with that, right, like, and having your own channel and like that, I was like, that's huge. That I didn't even think about nothing like that, and now as you've kind of built it out and you're kind of filling in the spaces and creating content that fits the overall goal. One, the content is quality, right? I think the conversations, the messages that are being shared, the way that they're being shared openly and honestly, and like conversations that we get to be a fly on the wall for, that should happen more often in public, but only really happen in private or not at all. That could enrich, encourage, embolden, enlighten other brothers. Those are amazing, and what you're doing is amazing. And I know that when the time is right, you've put in the work, right? And so once it pops, like, the content is there and it just takes off, right? But I think there's a lot to be said about betting on yourself, staying committed to the process, regardless of the results, right? The process is the way that a lot of guys can lean on and learn from. Not only learn from the content that you're putting out, but learn from the journey that you're on, and following your heart and leaning into your purpose and creating something that is not just for you, but for everyone to grow from. I certainly appreciate it. And every time I see a link or a post or a video, I'm like, man, John's out there killing, man. Every time I look up, he got something new cooking, and that's awesome, man. It's definitely inspiration for me, and I know for the guys that are following you, for the guys that are subscribed to you on YouTube and all the different platforms are growing and benefiting from your vulnerability and outreach. And willingness to kind of be a vessel, right?
It's it wasn't how I lived most of my life, but like I said, at this point, I feel a lot freer in general. Like that first episode probably took me 5 hours, and I ended up recording maybe at like 3 a.m. or something like that, and I thought it was trash. And I went back and looked at it the other day, and I still think there's a lot that I've learned since then, but just who I was then and who I had to become just to get to that point, man, it's changed my life. So I'm grateful for it, man. I'm grateful for you being a real one, because you have a large platform in my eyes and in the eyes of many, and that's never been a conversation, at least with me, about even when you hopped on a plane to come out here, and I was like, okay. All right. All I can do is feed you at the event. I don't have any other means to do anything else, but I think you got value from it and maybe some connection. So it's things like that. And that's happened several times since, like, people are, hey, I want to be on your show. I'll be in town on X, or I can come in town. I'm like, man, this is a passion project to a large degree. But it's resonating with people, and it's actually giving me the confidence to say, hey, look at what I'm doing. Cause I was never, even in corporate, like I would do the work and let the work stand. But, the feedback that I get lets me know that I'm robbing people of something valuable if I just keep it to myself. So thank you, brother.
Yeah, I think what resonated with me, and the reason why I came out, and the reason why I support the way I do, is the authenticity, right? Like, you are authentically yourself, right? And it's not like you were putting on a show, or you're trying, like, because you see there's some podcasts, there's a million podcasts, right? And some people are podcasting for podcast sake, right? Like, oh, well, I got a business, I should have a podcast so I can share my business so people come and buy from me. You know what I mean? Or the podcast is just a way to market some product or something. And then I think every podcast is, to an extent, but I think the product that you're marketing is fatherhood. Product that you're marketing is connection. Product that you're marketing is brotherhood, is understanding, is learning, is growth. It's pushing the community forward, not just the Black community, but the community of fathers. And that's something that I want to be a part of and wanted to be a part of, right? Like, to me, it was a benefit to me to be in the room, right? Like, my daughters are big Hamilton fans. And my youngest has probably seen the Disney version of it like 20 something times. We went and saw it live here in LA, but there's a scene and a song where it's like, I just want to be in the room when it happened. Right. I was just trying to be in the room, right. To be inspired. And I am, right. Because I left that room with the understanding of, I don't know how many guys were there, but a ton of guys I got to talk to that encouraged me, that uplifted me, that inspired me by the words they were saying or the actions that they were taking. And so, selfishly, I came out there so that I could be better. But I wouldn't have had the opportunity to get better had you not went out on a limb and created something like that kind of gave men the opportunity to connect, but then also to share, and to share beyond that room. And I think that's what the podcast is. Obviously, there's some income to come along with that through partnerships and, all these other things that kind of happen as you grow. But I think at the core of it, you're still on leaning into the core, right? Which is fatherhood, which is, having the conversations that young men need to have with their fathers. You're having those conversations, you're asking those questions, you're getting those answers and leaving it out there, because this podcast lives in perpetuity. Like, it's going to be around forever. Right. Episode 1 is still accessible, even though we're on episode 100 and whatever. Right. Like, so there's always that information at any given time. Some young man could stumble upon episode 6 and be like, oh man, that's exactly what I needed to hear. So whether it is producing the result we're looking for right now or not, ultimately down the line somewhere, that ripple is going to hit the right person, and it's going to inspire them to do something else. And I always think about, my first 2 years in this adventure, it was crickets, man. It was like me and, 10, 15 other people. It's just sending memes and videos back and forth to each other. And I'm posting stuff and getting like 1 or 2 little hearts here and there. And it was just like, yo, I'm not in it for that. And I'm still not in it for that. Like, I'm just posting content that I think is going to resonate with someone, because it hits a certain part of me. Like, we're all different types of father, we're all different types of men, but overall, there's some part of everything that I post that connects to some part of me. And I feel like, I'm not an exception to the rule. I'm not an exceptional individual. I'm a regular guy, just like everybody else. I'm a father, just like everybody else, a husband, a man, all these things. And so, if it hit me a certain way, then there's somebody else out there that I need to share this with, that probably needs to hear that same word or to see that same video, so that they can affect the change in their household the way that they want to. And I think as long as you stay connected to the purpose of it, the rewards, the fruits of your labor will happen at some point, right? Like, it's just like being a gardener. You plant that seed and there's no telling, like, there's not exact time frame on when it's going to start to produce fruit. but you get out there and you till the soil and you water and you prune and you do all the things that you're supposed to do, because that's what you're supposed to do, not because you want a certain type of fruit to produce itself, right? So I think that lesson goes a long way, because I tell guys that I talk to all the time is like, in fatherhood, we're going to do everything that we think is right. We're going to get it wrong a lot of times, but we honestly won't know how well we've done until our children are adults and parenting their children, right? Because they're going to either parent from, this is how my dad did it, so I want to do it exactly like he was amazing at it, and so I want to parent like my dad parented, and you see them parenting their kid the way you parented them. And obviously they're going to put their own little special spins on it, but if they get to a point where they're like, I don't want to be, I'm gonna be nothing like my dad. My dad was a tyrant, he was terrible and all that. Then you get to see like, okay, I leaned in too hard, or I was, maybe I went about it the wrong way, and then hopefully you get a grandchild where you could be different. But we don't know. We don't know what kind of fruit we're going to produce. We just have to do it the best job we can as a gardener. And I think the same thing is with the podcast, is that we just continue to do the gardening, right? We just continue to be good shepherds of whatever flock we have, and then we get an opportunity to be shepherds of many. But I think that's all a part of the journey.
Completely agree, man. Completely agree.
So as you're building out the platform and you're creating content, where are you going now with it? I know like you kind of have a new show. Did you come up with a name? I didn't know. I didn't see if you had finished officially. I know you were talking about you hadn't had a name yet, but
Yeah,
you
it's
guys settle on it.
The working name is Two Grown Men Having a Conversation, because that's kind of how he's been opening it, and people are, it was kind of 55-45 split. Should be just keep it unnamed or keep it Two Grown Men Having a Conversation, but that's the identity, and that's what we do. We sit down and we're, like I said, we're different stages, different backgrounds of life. The common thing is believing God for what He's going to do, and even that looks interesting in conversation because of the lens that we see through. So, it's resonating well. Anything you do that requires an audience, you have to constantly tell the audience about what you're doing. And that's the latest maturing step that I've taken in my content. So when you say you see me all the time, I that's great, because the platforms do what they want to do, and they're free. I mean, unless you're paying for ads, there's only so much you can complain. But I'm putting it out there. We're working, and content is going out. So yeah, that's the working name for that show. And where else is it going? We have some series that we've started writing. So me and my co-host Jay Black on the Friday episode started writing a series that basically takes the topics and the conversations that we've had and puts them into a more entertaining or visually appealing kind of context. So, things that, have you talked to your sons about condoms? Have you talked to your daughters about, that's a conversation I have with your daughters too. Like, how do you broach those conversations? Because even though I recognize that me and my father didn't have them, and he's admitted to that, sometimes I look at my sons and I'm like, it's a double dutch. Like, am I getting in or am I not? So we want to make it easier to have those conversations by leading you into the conversation in a more entertaining fashion. So that's something that I'm committing to getting at least a series out this year. And I've been stalling on a movie for the last 3 years, but the pen is back to paper. So there's nothing stopping me from doing it other than me.
Okay. I'm excited to see that. I think that's a great idea, because we are all probably double dutching. We are all probably like knowing that the conversation needs to happen, knowing that, where our kids are getting to a certain age or certain things are starting to happen around them. And it's in our best interest for us to be proactive than reactive. But we don't know if like us broaching the conversation is now going to open up Pandora's box, right? Like right now, my daughter isn't talking about condoms, and she's about to be an 8th grader, and then soon she'll be in high school. And I know high school kids. I was a high school kid. Do I want, 15-year-old Jimmy to be talking to her about it, or do I want to like get ahead of it? or as me getting ahead of it now, going to open up her eyes to the possibilities. And now when 15-year-old Jimmy talks to her about it, he doesn't sound so foreign. It doesn't sound crazy to her, and she embracing it. Like there's all these things that I think about in terms of like having these conversations with my girls, and it's like I'm just gonna have to put myself in front of the spear and take it, and then like really have a deeper conversation so that I don't leave any room for further curiosity that might lead her down the wrong path. You know what I mean? Is what I'm saying am I giving her a full understanding of it, or am I just saying, teenage boys suck, don't talk to teenage boys? Like,
Yeah.
that's not that's not a great conversation to have, because it doesn't allow for her to have input, doesn't allow for her to ask questions, and then being open to having the tough conversation with them, and not shying away from it. Because I know, just as in general, like I'm pretty non-confrontational. Like I had enough confrontation in my life. At this point now, I'm trying to avoid confrontation, and I'm trying to just lean into peace as much as possible. But sometimes you got to talk about war in times of peace. Like sometimes you got to talk about the uncomfortable things so that it becomes comfortable, so the next conversation isn't, we aren't all blindsided by it. Like we all can walk into that conversation and say, hey, in the context of our last conversation, this is how we address this, and she has an understanding, we have an understanding, and I'm trying to embrace that more and more as they get older. I find myself not censoring my conversation as much, or not talking about things around them, and just kind of like, okay, hey, these are things that are actually happening. Like these are things that are happening in the world, and I can't shield you from them forever. So it's best that you experience them with me or my wife, so that we can give you context and explain some of the things you're seeing or hearing. Some of the music you're listening to, and some of the things that have been, inappropriate completely to you before. Maybe now, we have a better conversation around it, and that's tough. That's this next phase of parenting is not for me so far. No, it's not bad, right? I'm still a cool dad, so she still wants to talk to me about stuff, right? And her friends think I'm cool, which is a even bigger bonus, right? Because as long as they think I'm cool, then I'm in there like swimwear. But I'm finding myself having, like I said, tougher conversations about things that I wasn't looking forward to having conversations about,
Yeah. Yep.
But this is the way, right? This is the season, and I think I wouldn't have the because I don't have the experience, right? This is my first teenager, but without having conversations with guys like you and guys I've talked to on the podcast, or just having a circle of men that are at different levels of fatherhood, or having a community of men that I can lean on, like, hey man, my daughter's about to be 13. What was it like with your teenage daughter? Like, what did you go through? And obviously we come from different backgrounds, but at least I can gain some insight on what to expect, right? This is my own version of what to expect when you're expecting, kind of thing, right? Like, I'm expecting a 13-year-old. What's going on here? Like, and I think a lot of us, because we have bought into the lone wolf mentality, or just by the way, things work, we might only have one friend, or no real friends, right? We got some guys we talk to about sports, and we got some guys at work that we talk, we talk about the boss and how we don't like him. We work together, but then, once work is over, we don't talk until the next time we clock in. We don't have any real connections, and so we're struggling through it all by ourselves. I think I have the unique ability now to talk to other people about my problems, or maybe problems before they become problems, that I didn't have before, which makes life a lot easier.
That's the hack. That's the whole hack of this podcast, man. It's a lot of selfish gain
Mm-hmm.
when you get to talk to people and get insight without having to have the experience, because that's wisdom doesn't necessarily require you having the experience.
Yeah.
You applying information that you got from wherever you got it to avoid certain things or to benefit from certain things. That's how wisdom works for me. So I love it.
Yeah. And I say it all the time too, is like, this whole vision, this whole mission is for other fathers. It is my way to help change the world. But when I'm really honest about it, and I had to look back at this when I first started and like get really clear on it, because I think clarity is extremely important in the mission, right? If we got a journey or something we're trying to accomplish, we got to get extreme clarity on what it is. And so sitting with it and really thinking about it, I was like, at the core of it, I think I want to help create a better world because my daughters are going to be in that world, right? Like if I'm not helping fathers become better fathers, better husbands, better men, then the children that they raise are going to be a reflection of them. And my daughter's going to have to go out into the world with those kids, and they're going to struggle because those kids don't have, and not that I'm perfect or by any means, I'm far from it, but I'm constantly growing and learning. And if I'm not sharing those same things with the other men that are out there in the world, then, you know, their kids live with my kids and my kids have to struggle unnecessarily. But if I can affect one household at a time, one community at a time, one city, like, and it continues to grow out, then maybe by the time, you know, my grandkids are kicking around the world, like it's just a better place. And that's the ultimate goal or the ultimate dream, is that, you know, just through a few conversations and sharing a few videos and some posts and some insight from other fathers, that we can build a network of better men to usher the world forward. But it's semi-selfish.
We're aligned on that.
Because I know it's gonna happen, right? I can only keep them in the house for so long, right? It's even happening now, right? They want to go hang out with their friends. Like this Friday, my oldest is going to an amusement park with her friends. They're gonna be there for several hours. They're, you know, one of her friends is 13, so it was basically a teenage kind of thing. They would go out and hang out. And I remember going to the theme parks when I was around her age. Like, we was going to talk to girls. Like, you know what I mean? We want to get on the rides, of course, right? We want to, you know, get on the rides and be scared. But in between the rides, we was trying to talk to the girls. And it's different, right? Because we was trying to get somebody's number, and we probably would never talk to them again. but I understand what's happening and what's gonna happen. And you know, boys are cute now. They don't have cooties. They're not dumb. And so things are different. And so I have to be different.
It happens fast, bro. It happens very fast.
Yeah. Um, I do want to ask that, you know, now that you have, you know, you got your older children, you got your younger children, is there a version of you in the growth of your children that you feel like is the best version of you, or are you becoming still the best version of you? Is there like moments of fatherhood you look back and you go, damn, I killed it. Like I was really good. I was really dadding at that point, and I need to get back to that? Or are you still in that and you're kind of building that out as you go?
Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever arrive. Somebody will have to give me an assessment of that some years from now. Like you said, how your kids turn out is the best assessment of how effective of a parent you are. So there are things that I'm starting to see. You know, I have conversations with my older children or my son, and I mentioned it before, like my son telling me I'm relatable now. I'm like, ooh, that means a lot, because I know what it was to be 17 and avoid my dad, you know, and let alone having access to everything they have now. I mean, we actually had to go out and look at girls and talk to them.
Yeah.
And ask them for information and write it down. Like you said, I have the goal to actually call them and figure that life out, like figure that things out. Everything now is just open the phone. You got access to the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that. So, like those checkpoints, they give me, they encourage me, or they point out some things where I still need to grow, but I'm far from it, man. It's so much. It's so much that I'm still undoing. And there's so much that I'm not sure about how they feel about what they've seen to date. Like a big focus for me right now is like the relationship that I have with my wife. And it's not violent or anything like that, but we've been married 20 years. We got 5 kids and a grandchild. It's very easy to not be connected or to not prioritize each other. And you think you're doing the right thing because the kids are coming first and all of that. But you look up 20 years or 25 years or 30 years, you got to relearn who you're married to. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that to be the version of what they seek. So it's things like that I don't think I'll ever perfect, but I am much more hyper aware of who I am and who I'm not today. So I think that's a win.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And just kind of leaning into that point about the relationship with your wife. I think we're starting to realize that as well, as our daughters are starting to want to spend more time away from us, right? Like they want to go do things more. We're finding that we have more time together that we previously hadn't had. And so I think on both ends, it's like, oh, finally got time to do that thing I've been wanting to do forever. And what ends up happening is I go do the thing that I want to do, and she go do the thing that she want to do, and we're not connecting on the time that we now have. And so then when we do come back together, it's like, man, we had all this time and you didn't even want to hang out with me. Like you didn't want to spend time with me. And I'm like, damn, I didn't even think I wasn't thinking like I didn't want to spend time with you. I was like, I finally get to go do the thing that I've been trying to do forever. Like I get to go to, I get to go to the car show this weekend because I hadn't been able to go for the last 10 years. So I'm going to go to the car. I'm going to go to the cigar lounge because I haven't been able to go in forever. And she's like, well, both of us are like, but we could have spent time together. And we're just realizing that now. And so it's like, I think kind of being present in that as well as involved and present in fathering and parenting as I am, I've got to start leaning back into that relationship more and actively and intentionally start doing the things that build that up, because I do know they may not be gone at 18, but at some point they're going to be gone and we're going to be together. And if we haven't kept up a relationship over the last, 18 years, we'll be, perfect strangers at the end of it, and trying to learn each other at 50 something years old. You're pretty much set in your ways at that point. You know what I mean? Like you're not making too many more adjustments. You're not trying to appease anybody at that point. And in all honesty, you may not even want to be in a relationship with nobody new at that point. And if the person that you're with, you haven't created or cultivated or built a strong bond along the way, it's very easy to be like, you know what, kids are out of the house. Me too. And I definitely don't want that. So I'm leaning into our relationship a little bit more too as my girls get older. And that's kind of my signal. I'm using them as my signal. It's like, you don't want to go to the park with me today? All right, it's cool. Whatever. I'm going to spend time with your mama now. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm going to spend time with your mama, and it's different your mama jokes now. But they, and it's even funny for them too, is like, cause my littlest is a cuddler. Like she wants to be up underneath you and up under your arm. And, as we've kind of leaned more into spending time together, yesterday, actually, my little one was like laying on me and my wife was like, why are you always cuddling with my husband? And I'm like, oh, it felt good. Like she wanted to cuddle with me. Get out of here, little kid. Get over here,
That
but
part.
we had leaned so much into being mom and dad, you start losing sight of husband and wife. And that's something that I think is, as I say, is probably the most important relationship that you have. Even when you want to be a great
That's
father,
how it started.
that relationship is the, as you would say, healthy marriage is dope. And, I'm trying to lean into that dope.
It's a choice sometimes, man, but that's if that's the person you chose to do life with, you
Yeah.
got to do all of life with them.
Yep. Yep. So, I do want to. I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the podcast, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it. I know we talked years ago, and you encouraged me to have a conversation with my father because you had a conversation with yours, and you shared with me how enlightening that was, and you challenged me to do it, and it took me a while because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to have a conversation. I wasn't ready to ask the questions that I wanted answers to because I didn't know how he was going to take it. I didn't know, being respectful, right? Because I was raised with respect. Is it like, am I questioning him? Is he going to take this the wrong way? Is me asking these questions going to shatter our relationship? Because they're tough questions. But we got an opportunity. We did like a family camping trip, and he came along and the whole family was there. But me and him slipped off to the tent one night, or sorry, to the cabin one night, and we just had a talk. And we actually recorded it, did it as an episode of the podcast, and it was like an hour and a half of conversation, asking questions. And funny enough, it didn't record. Well, 30 minutes of it recorded. The rest of it didn't. But I'm cool with it because the conversation that we had was bigger than the podcast. You know what I mean? It was
Sure.
it was for. It would have been nice to share, all of it, But I think having that conversation, I got to learn about him things that I had only thought I knew, right? That I only knew from a child's perspective. Like I didn't know the depth of the relationship that he had with his father. And I didn't, and it was my grandfather who I had a really tight relationship with, and he didn't, you know, like he even said at one point, he was like, I think you and my dad had a better relationship than me and my dad had. And my grandfather passed when I was like 8. So in those 8 years, he was like, you probably had a better relationship with him than I had my entire life. And that was partially my grandfather trying to make up for, missing my dad's life the way that he did. But just, some of the stuff that he shared with me about his stepfather. And then I'm hearing him talk about it. I'm like, damn, this makes sense why you were the way that you were. Right. Now I have context for the man that you were for me as my father, and not just my father. Like now I'm getting to learn the man. Right. And I would have continued on throughout my life with these perceptions of you and the things that you did based on you alone, not a total package of your experience and your upbringing. Being the oldest of 6 or 7, sorry, being the oldest of 7, having a father that was in the same city, but like not in your life the way that he should have been. That did some of the things that he did, living up in the shadow of him because he was a pretty popular individual in the city, but not having that connection with him, hearing his name ring out in different places and in connection with you, and you look like him, but you don't get to see him or experience him having another family, like all these different things that we got to talk about that I never would have thought about, and how they impacted and influenced his parenting and his fathering. And I'm like, damn, man, I got to give you grace. And I gave you I was giving you the short end of the stick. I appreciate you. I love you to death. But I was maybe resenting you or blaming you in certain ways that you were just doing the best that you could with what you had. And so I want to thank you for that, because it was a conversation that I probably would have just continued to not have until it was too late, right? It was too late to make good on, or was too late to like live with another perception of him. One of those, you see in the movies, it happens in real life. We get to the deathbed, and then finally we get to ask these questions right before they pass, but you don't get to live with the person after that. And so I'm getting to live with a fuller understanding of my father, the man, right? Who Roderick Richard Sr. is as a person, not just as my father. And I think that is something that I if I could pay you for, I would pay you for, you know what I mean? Because it definitely, it opened my eyes to who he was, but then it opened my eyes to like how I was parented by him, and then how I can parent my children, and how that continues to roll, right? It's like there's some things that I learned that I see myself doing because he did, but now that I understand why he did it, I can make the adjustment. You know what I mean? So I think that's
Yeah,
something
man.
for
I'm happy it worked out.
yeah.
I'm glad it worked out. That makes it worth it. Like it's your story definitely touched me, because we didn't have this conversation, but I heard you reference it before. And another guy that was on very toxic relationship with his father reached out to him a couple of days after the show, called me within a week or 2 weeks, let me know that his father had passed. But he was so excited when he called me. He was like, "Yeah, my dad just died." But I said, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute. Like, I don't know how to
Right.
process what you're saying." But he was like, "No, we had a conversation after I came on the show. We were able to talk about some things and get an understanding." I was like, "Man, that was those two right there alone are worth it to me."
Yeah. Yeah. I would encourage everyone, whether your relationship with your father is good or not. I think, because I look at my daughters this way too. It's like there's so much about me that they don't know, and there's no way for them to know it unless we talk about it. And they don't know to ask certain questions, and I don't know to say certain things, right? So they're if you are blessed enough to have an adult parent and you're an adult, you get to have an adult conversation, and really ask the things that you want to know. Allow them to share the things that they need to share, that they couldn't tell their child, right? Like when something was happening in my life and things are going crazy, and like we were getting free lunch, and we got to go to the Boys and Girls Club to get food, and we're getting food stamps and all these things. I'm like, damn, what is going on in my life? Like, I just live in it. Like, I was just a kid. This is just what's happening. Lights get cut off. Whatever. Everybody in my neighborhood was going through the same thing. It's just the way things go. But talking to him, he's like, during this time, this was happening, and then I had got laid off from this job, and like I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, I can look back at it differently and be like, damn, he really, or they really, because he was telling me some stuff about my mom too that I didn't know. It's like they really was like making it happen in some extenuating circumstances to where I didn't feel like it was bad. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that we talk about, and I say, like, now in living the life that I live now, we're bad, right? Looking back at it, and they made it so comfortable, even in the bad times, right? And that I have to give them credit for, that I just didn't think about, like, how well they managed their situation, even though it was treacherous at times, even in their relationship between the two of them being divorced and not liking each other for a long period of time. I didn't get to feel that, right? Like, they managed to co-parent in a way that allowed me to feel like I had a loving mom and a loving dad. My dad dealing with, his situations with addiction. I knew that he went away for a little while, but when he came back, he jumped right back in the ship, right? Like, he came back and he did what he was supposed to do as a father. And like,
Yeah.
hearing his experience and what was going on for him during that time, I'm like, damn, I'm glad that I don't really remember what was going on during that time. But two, I'm glad that you saw me as the reason why you needed to get back on track, right? Why you need to get your life back together, because you wanted to fight to be in my life. And like, it touched me in a way, like, we hugged and we cried and we shared, you know what I mean? Like, it was because I never got a chance to talk to him about it. Like, and I just wondered, or I
Yeah.
just assumed, or I just, out of respect for how sensitive the conversation was, I just never broached it. And never asked why he was gone or what he was doing or whatever. And I got to have it. And it gives me perspective on my children and my parenting, and how committed I have to be in order to get back and stay committed to them, right? Because he overcame a massive obstacle that a lot of people don't come back from, right? A lot of people don't make it back, and he
It's true.
did. And he did because his need and want to be a present father outweighed all of his struggles. And that I look at all the time is like, look, if he could do it, I can do it. Like, I got some minor struggles right now. You know what I mean? I'm busy at work. That's a minor struggle, right? I got like other stuff going on at the gym or whatever. Those are minor struggles, right? Like, my schedule is too busy. Oh, third world problem or first world problems, right?
Right. Very
I
first
really
world. Yeah.
make this happen and make sure I'm present and available, because there was somebody who had real struggle that still got it done. So
Glad it
thank you.
worked out for you, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we obviously could probably talk about this forever, right? Talk about fatherhood forever, but we're about an hour 15 at this point, and I know for guys that are listening, this is usually right around where they start kind of tailing off. So I don't want to. We can maybe come back to the conversation, but before we part ways, I do want to ask you, um, in all of the work that you've done for the time that you've been doing it, throughout your entire experience of fatherhood, and as you continue to grow in the process, this may have changed since the last time. So I definitely want to ask, what does now, doing the work that you've done, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Man, fatherhood is a privilege. It's not a right. And your ability or inability to manage that privilege changes the trajectory of how this world is going to function. It's like you said, that you want to do something good in your house, in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city, and let it resonate out. What if everybody took fatherhood seriously? What kind of world would that be? I mean, I think that's the essence of how a family structure is solidified and maintained throughout generations. So having that perspective now I'm slower to anger. And a lot of my anger in the past was out of frustration about things that I hadn't actually told them. So I'm angry at myself that my kids don't know this thing that I never told them. And they're acting in a way that I don't expect because I didn't tell them how I expect them to act. So it's changed my perspective, and I had to learn to give myself grace because I graded myself on a very, very tight scale. So even though like I had access to my father, my situation was very different from yours in terms of how we got to the space. We still had space between us. So I went years that I wasn't seeking advice or seeking this information that could have accelerated my ability to have information about an experience versus going through the experience again. So yeah, man, it's a huge responsibility, but it's a privilege, man. It's not everybody doesn't get it. Everybody definitely doesn't get it right. So if you have that opportunity, man, you do whatever you got to do to get over yourself. And I mean that. Like, and a lot of that is allowing your being okay with not having everything figured out. Like that was a big deal for me because a man figures things out. A father figures things out. He doesn't need to talk to people about it. He just figures it out. So can go on and on and on about my errors, but when you recognize it as a privilege, man, it changes things.
Yeah. You know what? That makes me think something, and now I'm gonna kind of get your input on it. Do you think that becoming a father redefines what a man is? Because we could talk about what manhood is outside of fatherhood, right? And what a man is. But do you think that there is now a different definition of a man once he becomes a father? Or is it just an elevated level of the things that make up a man?
I think you have a greater sense of self. You have a greater appreciation for mortality. You have a greater appreciation for life itself. Like there are things that you can't appreciate about life without certain experiences. Like those that have had a near-death experience probably by far appreciate life more than somebody that has or appreciate it differently. So I don't think it necessarily redefines a man, but it may help you redefine what's important or what matters.
Okay.
For me, anyway.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. Because I do agree. I don't think it changes. I think a man is a man, right? But I think there's a little bit more of a microscope on the things that matter. Like you said, there's a heightened level of responsibility for sure. There's a definite need for more self-awareness, social awareness. I think there's for sure, like I am very aware of, I may not be here someday. Whereas when I was single or I was married, but it was just the two of us. Like if I'm going, she's an adult, she could take care of herself, right? Like now it's like, yeah, I better make sure I stick around because these kids, I haven't taught them everything I need to tell them, right? Or how would my absence impact them? Like I'm thinking about those things where I wouldn't have thought about those before. So I do agree with that it is still the same definition, but there's probably it's in bold, right? Like it becomes it jumps off the page a little bit more. All right. You're obviously already doing this, but if you could narrow it down, right? Like, cause you're already speaking to fathers, you're already creating content that is sharing a message with men, with fathers. But if you could kind of work it down to one or maybe two sentences that are the core message that you want fathers to hear, what do you think that would be?
I think at this stage, man, other than giving yourself grace is don't be afraid to find out who you are. And when you find out who you are, don't reject it. Make the necessary adjustments, but like we do a lot of rejecting ourselves because we are of a certain way or we see ourselves a certain way or we haven't achieved a thing. And all of that is probably rooted in something else that actually isn't about achieving a thing.
That's going to take a lot of thought. That's like inception level thinking, right? Like, cause you got to think about, you got to figure out who that is. And then you got to dive under that and figure out what the root of who that is. And then after you do all that, you still got to embrace it, right? Like you still got to embrace that that's who you are. And maybe not reject it, but like, okay, if you're not content with who that person is, what is the work that can be done to become the person that you want to be? That's like that, that's the third layer of it. You got to kind of keep digging deeper and deeper and figure out what that is, because all of that at the bottom line is why you're showing up the way you show up. Right. And
Exactly.
that's definitely going to require some thought. And I don't think any of us are going to be perfect at that. I think we're always going to be continuing to do that, right? Because every stage of life is going to require a different version of ourselves, and so we have to figure out who that is, or in order to get to that, we have to figure out who we are right now, and then plot a path forward. Okay, all right. A similar question, right? You got 5, a plus, a bonus, right? If you were to give a message to your children and grandchildren, what would that message be?
I would tell them to do the thing. Whatever it is that's in their spirit that's driving them, that gives them joy to think about, that scares them to think about, do the thing. Lean into that.
I like that because I think going back to your last suggestion is a lot of us will reject that thing, right? Maybe it's not the right time. I'm not the right person. Imposter syndrome. I'm not the right person. I can't do this. I can't do that. But I think you're spot on. Is because we're providing the life the way that we are for our children. We're providing the space for them to do the thing, right? And so do it. I got your back. Like, I'm supporting you. Like, whatever it is, do the thing. I got your back. I think that's a privilege that not everyone has, but I think that they should lean into doing the thing. Right. All right, brother. Look, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a busy schedule. You got all the things that you're creating. You got your own content that you're putting out, but I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us, to share your journey, to share, the messages that you just shared, to continue to be a willing vessel and provide resources for men, for sons, for fathers, for husbands, for brothers to continue to get better, or just to gain knowledge and understanding of themselves in all of the different ways that you're doing it. I appreciate you, man. And I want to make sure that I let you know, I want to give you your flowers now, because, we know how flowers go, right? We typically get them when we can't smell them. And I want to make sure that you get an opportunity to smell your flowers, brother. You're doing amazing work. And I really appreciate you taking the time with us.
I appreciate the invite, man. Anytime I can show up for you, I'm there.
All right. Now, hey, if brothers aren't already listening to you, if they didn't hear the podcast, years ago and then lock in on everything that you're doing, but they heard this one and they want to, just go out and support, or they want to learn more, what is the best way for them to do that?
TheDearSonPodcast.com. TheDearSonPodcast.com is the catch-all. You can find the audio there. You can find the video there. And it plays from the sources, so I'll still get the credit as if you were watching it on YouTube or your audio platform. But that's the catch-all. And you can find any other pieces of information about me on that.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna let you go. You probably got the little one probably up from nap right now, so you gotta go get some pop duty in.
We about to pod, actually. My partner just showed up. We about to pod right behind this one.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be some solid information. I'm excited to hear once it finally comes out. Thank you again, brother.
No problem. Appreciate you.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
All right, you just tuned into another episode of the Forfeit Fatherhood podcast, and I sincerely hope that you walk away from this episode with something that you can use in your fatherhood journey. If you aren't already, please make sure you go like, subscribe, share the podcast. There's fathers out there who need this information just like you did. Make sure that they get it.